Mr Speaker. I would just, I enjoyed the contribution from my colleague from the Labour Party, and she's quite right about the productivity of low-paid workers. I would just like to, inform the House that the ACT Party disagrees completely. If you see in the alternative budget, Roger Douglas has said very clearly that the high-income earners are the most productive members of our society. Not the nurses, not the police, not the people who clean Roger Douglas's office so that it's nice and tidy for him in the morning, not the parents of this country. No, the excessively and ridiculously wealthy are, by virtue of their wealth alone, obviously much more productive. And that is the kind of extremist position that you see from ACT and informing the National Party, because that is the same attitude of John Key when he tells the country, he tells low-income earners, he tells pensioners, he tells solo parents struggling to make their way with kids and take care of their kids well that they shouldn't be jealous, that they are going to get virtually nothing out of this budget while the very wealthy get the very most. Mr Speaker, the Greens have a vision for a smart economy and a better society, a smart economy that will deliver real prosperity for our people, for everyone and for our environment. A smart economy protects our environment. In Aotearoa, particularly, if we have no environment, we have no economy. Upon our environment rests all of our security and our wealth. And whether it's in our fresh water or in our oceans, our forests, our natural, healthy soils, our most treasured places, we are 100% dependent on our environment. And a smart economy will sustain our natural capital rather than squander it, as this government intends to do. A smart economy includes smart taxes that fairly share the tax obligation and the tax burden across our community. A smart economy delivers real and new jobs in sustainable industries that will enhance rather than degrade our environment and our communities. And so the legislation and the budget on which this legislation is premised fails to meet all these criteria for a smart economy. And it is a great shame for those families and their children who will bear the cost of that failure. On Monday, the Green Party launched our Mind the Gap proposal, a Green New Deal package of solutions that would create jobs, generate government income and combat the growing inequality that is a blight on our communities. Now, we focused on inequality and its effects on children because income inequality has been shown to be the single most important cause of a wide range of social and economic problems. We chose to focus on children and the effects of inequality on children because they are the future of our planet and our society. All children are entitled to live in a safe, sustainable society that protects their right to warm housing, safe, affordable food, quality public education and health care, all within a loving and supportive whānau. We know that inequality hurts every child and every family, not just those people who are at the bottom. We know that New Zealand is one of the most unequal countries in the developed world. We're 23rd out of 30 in the recent OECD report. We're the 6th most unequal country among highly developed countries in last year's Human Development Report. Shame on government. Shame on government for failing to do anything about it. Shame on John Key's government for making it worse, which is exactly what their tax cuts and their GST increase does. It makes inequality worse. New Zealanders, we like to think of ourselves as an egalitarian society where everyone gets a fair go, but the truth is that we are not, and the facts tell it a very different story. So, this budget, the Green Party has this vision that we can be a more equal and more sustainable Aotearoa. It is within the choices that we make. But this budget and this bill, produced by John Key government, chooses not to pursue that vision. John Key's government has already initiated some very big spending, about $10 billion on new motorways, an estimated $500 million from cutting the top tax rate, and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies to polluters through the emissions trading scheme. Again, sir, it is always a question of priorities, and the Green Party would prioritise our people and our environment. I just want to talk about one of the areas, which is housing, and there's some issues and there's some provisions in this bill for changes in property taxes and speculation. Now, the Mind the Gap package produced by the Green Party recommended the introduction of a comprehensive capital gains tax excluding the family home, and my fellow co-leader Russell Norman has talked about this himself in some detail today. Sarah, we know that in the longer term a capital gains tax will provide a serious and significant part of the solution to New Zealand's property crisis by broadening the tax base and protecting housing from what seems to be currently irrational property speculation intensity. A capital gains tax is necessary to strengthen our economy in the short and the long term. Now, this bill does have some minor changes around property speculation and property taxes. They are a small step towards the changes we need to make. But what we do also know is that any changes in property taxes could lead to increases in rental prices, particularly in the short term and particularly for those at the very bottom. And so in order to make sure that the spread is fair around the tax obligation and the tax benefit, we need to make sure that any changes in property tax, there is also a comprehensive building program of new state housing, in order to help provide affordable housing for those who need it the most. It is absolutely an urgent priority as well in this country. We have severe homelessness in this country in different ways, primary, secondary and tertiary levels of homelessness. And it's incredibly important for those families who live in overcrowded, cold, expensive housing that they have affordable alternatives. But this government won't be doing that because they have cut the budget for the building of new state homes. This government has cut the budget by more than $100 million for the building of new state houses. So there will not be any state houses being built under this government. That is clear from the budget cuts. And in fact, their only proposal is to sell off more state housing. That is and they congratulate themselves for having sold off 17 last year. There is no plan by this government to increase the supply of affordable housing for those families who need it the most. And the fact is that we must make that change, because safe, secure and sustainable housing is fundamental to the health and well-being of everyone, and everyone should have access to housing that is suitable for their needs. It's a basic necessity, and we know that being homeless or in overcrowded housing affects income, it affects employment, it affects attendance and truancy at schools, it affects health. The Human Rights Commission has identified that crowding, dampness and coldness are key issues for the New Zealand community. There's a state housing crisis with 10,000 families on the waiting list. Many people are living in rental accommodation where they have to move regularly in order to maintain, which has a huge impact on their education and employment. And we know that about 30% of at-risk and vulnerable young people are in unsafe and insecure housing. It is a serious crisis. The cost of cold housing on families in the community cannot allow to be continued. We know that we're losing about $1 billion in costs per year from cold housing, whether it's in relation to hospitalisation, the cost of respiratory illnesses, the cost of lost working hours. So we have a package that would deal with that. The building of 6,000 new state houses over 3 years at the cost of $2 billion that will provide 28,000 jobs. Housing is part of the bill. So that is a way of providing for affordable housing, providing access to affordable housing and creating 28,000 new jobs so that people actually have employment as well, and there's no employment strategy in this budget. But we'd also introduce progressive pricing into the electricity market, and this is a way of making sure that we can bring 70,000 households who are currently living in energy poverty out of energy poverty by providing a fixed rate of electricity provision at a low cost, and then anything that's used above that fixed level of provision comes at a higher cost. It's an effective way of providing support to those who are in the worst energy poverty. Like, for example, pensioners who live on their own in an old home have a 97% chance of living in energy poverty. Now, we can provide and support them out of their energy poverty if we simply choose to do so. The Green Party chooses to do so.